Some people have big dreams for retirement. They want the yacht, the vacation house, the new car. But some people are happy to retire small. They want to downsize. They want to own less. And to do all that in hopes that they'll have more time to enjoy themselves and less stress. And that's why today we're talking about ways that you can retire small, as well as some of the challenges you might face if you just simply want to enjoy life. So let's bring in our guest, Anthony Saccaro, president of Providence Financial and Insurance Services, a retirement income store just outside of LA. Anthony, as usual, always good to have you here.
Dave, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
So I'm not going to ask you questions about retiring small, because if your clients are watching, they've got one of the best advisors in all of California, so they probably don't have to worry about retiring small. Hopefully they can retire in abundance, right? But no matter how well you've set them up, I'm sure right now they turn on the news and there are some things that they're worried about. What are the two major things right now, headline news, that are concerning people that you talk to every day?
Well, one of the biggest things that is concerning overall is people running out of money before they run out of life. That's been a concern for many, many years. That's the overarching theme. But the headline news that they're paying attention to right now is inflation. They know that if inflation is higher than normal, that it could cause them to run out of money faster. And yet the reality is everyone has a personal inflation rate. And you don't hear this talked about on the media. You hear about the fact that last month inflation was 8.5%, and this month it clocked in at 8.3%. And that's what you hear. But the media doesn't bring it down to home. If you're in a situation where you've set up your life where you're debt free, you don't need a lot of monthly income to live, you've got a portfolio that you're not taking income off of, or maybe you're just taking the minimum amount of income, then you're going to be fine regardless of what the inflation is. That doesn't mean plan, but it does mean that you have to consider your personal inflation rate relative to the larger scale of inflation as well. But that's probably the biggest headline concern that give people worry at the moment.
Yeah, great point about inflation being a personal number. I've never used those words. I've talked around it, but very, very true. So what if you do have a client right now that is retired and they're using a good portion of their income today because they need it? What can they do?
So it's certainly going to be fact driven and dependent on that particular situation. But if someone has a retirement and they're maxing out their income right now, then they're going to have to do something to make sure that they can adjust down the road. If they're getting the maximum out of their portfolio that they can get right now, probably 4% range, as long as they're perfectly allocated, and maybe they're 65 years old and they could have 30 or 35 years left, then they don't have room to adjust for inflation without dipping in the principal. So they're going to have to look at, in their situation, what are some options to be able to adjust down the road. An option could be to downsize and pull some equity out of their home. They could sell their home, take a ton of equity out of their home, pay cash for another place, and have a lot of money left over. That's an option. A reverse mortgage could be an option. If they're inclined to go consult to save some more money, or just to keep from having to take as much from their portfolio, maybe that's something they like to do, they could do that. But the time to plan is now, and they're going to have to put their entire life situation on a path to where they can adjust down the road for inflation if they are in fact maxing out their portfolio now. So they just have to look at the big picture and develop a plan now to how they're going to deal with it if in fact they live another 30 years.
All right, so what if I plan to retire in a few years? I haven't retired yet, and let's say the Fed isn't successful in getting inflation under control to the level they want in the next 12 months. What would you tell me in that situation?
Well, you need to develop a plan, and your entire retirement is going to be revolving around a plan. But a good plan is going to be a plan that allows you to retire no matter what happens in the economy, no matter who the president is, no matter what the stock market does. If you have a plan that is contingent on the stock market doing well, or contingent on inflation being low, or on any other number of factors, then you have a bad plan. Your plan needs to be a plan that allows you to retire or accomplish what you want to accomplish, regardless of who's president, regardless of what the stock market does. You got to have a plan, and you also have to have a plan B. So very critical to have a plan.
So I think you're getting to what you always tell me in a way is one of the most common market misconceptions is that people think it's about hitting a certain lump sum number of assets when you retire, but that's really not true, as we've talked about many times.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception of retirees in general is that they can keep doing in retirement the same thing that they did to get to retirement. And that's absolutely not true. You might have a Chevrolet and take it to the Chevy guy and have that Chevy mechanic work on it. But if you buy a BMW, the reality is that's going to require different maintenance and probably a different person. And most advisors are specializing in growth. And most people think that when they get into retirement, they can keep doing what they've always done. The challenge is that that's absolutely not true. The strategies that get you to retirement can absolutely be deadly in retirement. And even if you don't know anything about money, just from a common sense standpoint, when you're saving and putting in, just to realize that the strategies for that are different than when you're no longer saving and you're taking out. So common sense, different strategies, and unfortunately, different advisors. Your Chevy guy is not going to be the right guy to help you work on your new BMW.
So let's get away from the inflation thing for a moment, because you're from California and most people in your state know that Joe Biden's going to fix it. He's going to solve all those problems. So let's get to the bigger problem, which is maybe the more evergreen problem, which is people's concerns about running out of money.
Yeah, so the reason that people are concerned about running out of money is because they don't have a plan and because they keep doing in retirement what they've done to get there. When you're going to retirement, you're heading to retirement, you're dollar cost averaging. That's just buying the same thing over and over again. And what that does is it drives the average purchase price down. Well, when you get into retirement, you're not buying anything anymore. You're now selling, and you're selling the same thing over and over again to get the cash that you need. And you're doing what you and I often refer to as manufacturing income. And if you sell shares this month to get income, then next month you have less shares, and the following month you have less shares. And what you're doing is you're reverse dollar cost averaging. And whereas dollar cost averaging drives the average purchase price down, reverse dollar cost averaging drives the average sales price down, which is the opposite of what you want to do. And so the moment that you are staying invested for growth, the strategies that got you to retirement, and the moment you start selling assets to get your income is the exact moment that you've just put yourself in a race against time. And now you're in a situation where you have to hope to die before you sell your last shares. The reality is that creates a lot of stress, that creates a lot of anxiety. It's a retirement is horrible if you've got a bunch of money and you're afraid to spend it. But if you know that you're selling shares and you have to spend your money to get the income, what it does is it causes you to want to spend less money. So now all of a sudden you've got this bunch of money and you don't want to spend it. So that's the fear. The good news is there's the ability to invest for income where you don't have to do that. And that's what this entire show is about.
Yeah, that's what the entire show's about. Okay, so final thoughts for our viewers, swing thoughts, a mantra, if you will, that they should be going by if they're retired or within 10 years or so of retirement.
So the mantra is, as I've mentioned several times, is have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going, and you have to have a plan B. If you're driving and you set up a road trip from California to Florida, the reality is, that there's going to be some deviations along the way. So you have to have some plan Bs, but you would never start driving from one end of the country to the other without having a plan. And you should never get into retirement without having a plan. And the key to a plan is to stick to it. You don't change the plan when inflation numbers come out at 8.5% and you see your fixed income portfolio drop. The reason for a plan is to tell you what to do when things don't go the way you want. You're a pilot. You know that you inspect the plane every moment before you get in it. And you don't make a plan when you hit the first bump. You know, when you get to the bumps, what your plan is going to be. And sometimes the bumps are bad enough where you have to make some deviations. And sometimes the bumps are bad enough where you just know you're going to go through them and you're going to come out fine on the other side. But you have to have a plan. You have to stick to it. Don't panic. Nothing good happens when you panic and make decisions.
And one of the biggest concerns is people today are getting sucked into what we call the robo-advisors, right? The thought that it's just like I'll program California to Florida in my GPS and it'll tell me how to get there. Well, that may work with navigation, but it certainly doesn't work. These robo-advisor programs scare me, and that's why it's important to have somebody who really truly is an income specialist. Like you said before, the same strategy that got you to where you are isn't the same strategy that's going to get you through retirement. So it's kind of like the old days, right? Where you had to go to AAA and they gave you a whole bunch of maps and they highlighted the route. It takes a little bit more work, but once you have the plan down, you can find your way as well, if not better, than with the use of the GPS today. So Anthony Saccaro, my good friend, always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for your words of wisdom.
Thank you for having me, Dave. Great to see you.
Thank you for watching today's video, The 5 Keys to a Successful Small Retirement. If you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up button, give us a like, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel for new content each and every week.